In today's episode, we've got a really great reselling conversation and some really important reselling news. Let's get to it. Hey everyone, welcome to episode number 28 of the Galaxy CDs, Rocks, and Flips Reseller Talk podcast, in which we will actually have reseller talk once again. I had a great interview with Mo Fremont from the Reseller Niche Podcast. I had actually interviewed with him on his show some time back, and today we're going to return the favor and talk to him on this show. So I hope you'll stick around for that, but we're going to kick it off.
News updates
With some reselling news. First up, eBay published on the 7th, so about 3 days ago by the time you see this, 2021 shipping carrier rate changes. January 24th, 2021, I've talked about this previously, the U.S. Postal Service will invoke its regular annual price increase. eBay has it listed. They don't have all of the specifics listed. If you want that, you'll need to go to the USPS site where they actually have an Excel spreadsheet, I believe, that you can download to see all of the rate changes. But the eBay article does talk about the fact that the USPS rates will be going up on January 24th of this year. So just a couple of short weeks from now. The increase is not quite as large as what we experienced during the holiday season. So it'll be a little bit less than that, but a little bit more than what we're paying right now. eBay also pointed out that as of this point, the UPS price increases have not been passed along to eBay sellers, which is something. UPS put in a rate increase that went into effect, I believe, at the end of December, and that has not passed on to eBay. So if you ship on UPS, you're in good shape. FedEx had new rates that went into effect on January 4th of this year. The price increase average was about 4.9% across the board. USPS rates, when they go up, priority mail is going to go up about 3.5%. First class packages are going to go up 6.5%, which is a pretty sizable bump, again, but not as big as the previous one. Parcel Select goes up 4.9%, and Priority Mail Express is 1.2% increase. So be on the lookout for those. Again, they go into effect January 24th of this year, so in a couple of weeks. Speaking of shipping and the ongoing issues, Amazon has eased new seller delivery requirements as COVID strains carriers. Amazon is relaxing some shipping performance requirements that were set to take effect in February for members of its Seller Fulfilled Prime program. This program allows sellers to designate Prime eligible inventory without paying for Amazon's fulfillment services. I didn't even know that existed. Last August, the company announced that starting in February of 2021, members of this program would be required to make deliveries on Saturdays and meet 1 and 2 day delivery targets. However, on Tuesday, Amazon announced that it was temporarily relaxing those delivery speed targets for SFP members in response to pandemic-generated, quote, constraints on the logistics industry. The SFP program, launched in 2016, enables third-party merchants to make inventory eligible for 2-day shipping and display the vaunted Prime badge on their listings without paying for Amazon's FBA services. With SFP, sellers store their own products, pack their own orders, while delivery is managed by carriers such as USPS, FedEx, or UPS. Of course, major carriers have experienced unprecedented strain on their systems throughout the coronavirus pandemic and then the holiday shopping season as well. On top of that, UPS and FedEx are likely to face even tighter capacity in the months ahead as they prioritize shipments of millions of doses of the coronavirus. Amazon says that beginning in June, now, SFP members will be required to show delivery speeds of 2 days or less for 70% of people who view their product listing. Sellers will still be required to support Saturday and Sunday deliveries and pickups, as well as provide nationwide delivery coverage beginning February 1st. So if you're part of that program on Amazon, you're going to get a little bit of a break. You're going to get until June to fully comply with that. eBay, they keep finding ways to get black eyes. There's a report out this week. Elephant ivory still being sold on eBay despite 12-year ban. Still being sold on eBay despite the online marketplace introducing a ban over a decade ago, researchers discovered. Sellers are misrepresenting the materials used in certain items and sometimes using, quote, code words to disguise illicit listings, researchers from the Durrell Institute of Conservation and Ecology at the University of Kent in England said in a statement Monday. In 2008, eBay announced it was introducing a global ban on the sale of ivory starting on January 1, 2009. Despite eBay's strict policy on animal and wildlife products, there is still an ongoing trade in ivory, mostly concealed as other non-restricted materials, said co-author David Roberts in a statement. He claims that of the items that they were able to discover on eBay, only 1.3% to 6.9% of them had been removed by eBay when researchers checked the listings again 1 month later. More than 50% had been sold, while half of the unsold examples had been relisted. If eBay was effectively enforcing its policy on ivory, these items would have been removed. Roberts went on to praise such sites as Etsy and Preloved as doing a, quote, fantastic job limiting sales of items linked to the illegal wildlife trade. If other companies can do it, certainly eBay and the like can also do it, he said. So this probably doesn't really affect any of us, but another example of eBay not really following through on the things that they say they're going to do. And this one, if you're, conservationally minded, this one is kind of a problem. The trade of ivory is something that's been a real sore spot for folks for a long, long time. And this is not a good look for eBay. Moving on to Poshmark. We talked a couple of weeks ago about their IPO, which is now, looks like it's going to happen this coming week. Poshmark has set the terms for a $257 million IPO, which is to begin trading possibly on Wednesday, January 13th or Thursday the 14th. It will be publicly available. They could not, this article, and again, as always, I will link to these in the show notes and the description below. This is on Barron's. Poshmark set the terms of the initial public offering. The company is offering 6.6 million shares ranging from $35 to $39 each, meaning it could raise as much as $257.4 million if it reaches the high end of their price range. When that is all said and done with all the other shares that are out there, Poshmark will have a $2.86 billion market capitalization at $39 a share. That's a bunch. So good on them. Hopefully that works out well for Poshmark. Some of the more recent IPOs have not done all that well, but everybody seems pretty confident in this one. Lastly, for our international listeners, eBay payments coming to more of Europe by April. eBay has announced it's expanding the rollout of managed payments in parts of Europe by the end of the first quarter. Currently, the US, Germany, UK, Australia, and Canada are enrolled and being enrolled in the program. It will roll out this payments program to France, Italy, and Spain later in Q1, which ends obviously at the end of March, on March 31st. So sometime over the next couple of months, if you're in France, Italy, or Spain, look for managed payments and all the fun and excitement with that to be coming your way. I say that tongue in cheek. I see people are still kind of off the deep end on the managed payments thing. I still have had no problems. My weekly payouts come on time, always. It's been great. So I have no issues. The only issue I have is I chose to set up my business banking account with Aslo, which is an online kind of business bank. They're a division of Compass BBVA. And they sent out an announcement this week that their parent company has decided to close them. if it ain't one thing, it's another. So if you're using Aslo, you probably got that email earlier this week. You're going to have to find another cheap business banking solution. I've yet to really start doing any research on that. They were totally free. So it was a great program for a small seller like me. BBVA is saying that they will roll existing Aslo business clients into one of their current business programs, but I don't see anything in my kind of dollar volume tier that looks like it will actually be free, which is kind of a problem because I really don't want to pay for banking. So if you have any good banking solutions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below so that I can look into that. With that, we are going to take a really quick sponsor break. For our podcast listeners, quick shout out, as always, to my man Timmy P for his ongoing support of the show. We will be right back with the interview with Mo Fremont from the Reseller Niche Podcast. Stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome to another Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reselling Conversation. Today, I'm really thrilled to be talking to someone who show I have actually appeared on, not once, but twice. We recorded one of his podcasts together, and I was on one of his lives. Please give a warm Galaxian welcome to Mo from the Reseller Niche Podcast. Thanks for coming out on this crazy, it's a Wednesday night. If you're following the news, man, it has been a crazy day in Washington, D.C., but we decided to go ahead and get this interview in the can anyway. So welcome to the show, Mo.
Oh, thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
No worries. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your kind of reselling niche, as it were?
I guess right now, to be honest, most of what I sell is used clothing. As interesting as that might sound.
I've seen a lot of people talk about that, not to interrupt you, but
sure.
There are some people that say clothing is a really, really great thing to start with when you're just starting in reselling. And there are others who say, absolutely not. You shouldn't mess with clothing until you're a little more familiar with what you're doing. What would be your opinion on that?
I would say the first thing that you said, because clothing is abundant from what I've seen, pretty much at least in the US. Any thrift store you walk into, I'd say more than 50% of what is there, more like 80% is like clothing. And on top of that, if you know about women's clothing, I would say that's which I don't do at all, which that would be an even easier avenue to join. Simply because there's so much of it.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if people have Goodwill bins. I mean, you could be talking about pennies on a dollar buying this stuff. So in terms of low dollar, easy access, I would say clothing is an easy route to get started into reselling.
Now, how about the other side of it, the listing and, the level of detail and the measurements and all that sort of stuff, the things that I hate about clothing. But for someone who's new, jumping into whether it's Poshmark or eBay or wherever they sell, and you've got to go through all that stuff, could that be intimidating for a new seller, or is that a great way to just dive in the deep end and get it figured out?
Definitely, it could completely be intimidating. I hated clothing first. I didn't start with clothing. I kind of fell into clothing simply because I saw so much of it. At first, I thought, you know what am I going to do with this shirt? What am I going to do with these pants? How do I even do this? What I would say with clothing is, like anything else, find something you possibly have in your own closet and start with that. In terms of getting started with things like picture taking and measurements, it's similar to anything else. The difference is the measurements. What I do to make it simple is I have a couple of rulers. I stole this. I saw a video on it online. There's two different things. I used to have a white background, which had like ruler measurement. So I would just put it on that. That kind of faded and I never replaced it. So instead I got two, I think they're 3-foot rulers. And I just put them in kind of an X shape.
Sure.
And you can put that down, that type of thing. You can put the clothes literally on it. That kind of thing. Or just simply put down a ruler and just do it that way. The main thing I would say with clothing is you probably want to have quite a bit of it because I've, at least in my opinion, a slow seller. It's long tail.
Right.
They're the most competition out of anything else, at least on eBay. So what I hear is people going into clothing saying things like, well, I put up 20 items and I don't see any sales.
Right.
That's pretty common with anything. Clothing might be a little bit worse because there's so much competition. I mean,
Well, yeah, and there are so many things you're up against with. I mean, you've got the style, the color, the size. So if you've got a green shirt in large, that's a really specific item.
Yes.
As opposed to you walk into a store and they have every color in the rainbow in sizes that people probably don't even wear. So that's how you would attack that as a retailer, which is where my background is. So to think as a reseller that you could, like you say, do 20 items and then be shocked that you haven't generated any sales is probably not a good plan.
Exactly. And I think where people kind of lose their way with clothing is they'll think clothing is one thing as well. When people talk about clothing, obviously you have so many different ways you can go. I know a lot of people just do shoes. They just do sneakers, not just shoes. Only do men's sneakers. That's it. And they kill it. So, I mean, I've done a little bit of that. And I actually, if I was telling someone to start off, I would tell them to start off if they're not grossed out by it, because there's that factor as well, with shoes, either new or used. But shoes, I think, are something that a lot of people avoid, but there's still a lot of them. So it kind of takes you away from the shirt racks, I guess.
Right.
That type of thing. So I do that. I usually deal with new shoes, and I used to do that more on Amazon. So that way I could just send them in, and it was pretty simple. You just, go with the barcode, whatever the code number is. But as far as, my advice for anyone looking to get into clothing would be pick something. I want to do t-shirts. I want to do, jeans. Jeans are another great one. There's so many different things you can do. But at the same time, once I started doing this, I found out that I wasn't, I'm not in love with clothing. I do a lot of other things as well. I sell a lot of video games, a lot of used toys, vintage toys. So you kind of figure out what you like.
Right.
And kind of something kind of comes with just picking and kind of starting the list.
Now, you mentioned you don't do women's clothes. Do you have a particular, a reason why you don't do women's clothes, and B, a niche that you have chosen in clothing to go down?
Yes. Well, with clothing, I do mainly shirts, mainly men's shirts. I do vintage T-shirts, and I do kind of button-up shirts, I guess you would call them. And I just basically have a list of brands, and which constantly rotates. I want to say everything's not that I just wear sweatshirts and hoodies and that type of thing. So that's not something that I know from personal use, but just from looking at the solds on eBay, that type of thing. I mainly stick with button-up shirts and T-shirts. I do a little bit of, I've done some jeans and some shoes, like I said. Now, with women's clothing, it's not that I don't want to sell that type of stuff. It's just I don't have the knowledge base.
Right.
And I kind of, to be honest, wish I did, because it's a huge, like I said, any thrift store, number one thing I think is women's clothing.
Oh, yeah.
Out of it. There's maybe, if there's 20 racks, 15 of them are women's clothing.
Yep.
So, I wish I did know more about women's clothing.
So what process did you use to find out kind of what brands made sense? You said you looked at kind of eBay solds.
Yes.
Would you think theoretically you could do the same thing for the women's clothes and at least pick brands that made sense? Or where would you be able to get the knowledge if you decided, you know what, it's too good an opportunity, I really need to dive in? Sure.
Well, with me, I'll tell you the reason why I didn't, first of all, simply because there were so many types of clothing I was already selling. I have lots of different types of sweaters. I do sweaters, vests, T-shirts, button-up shirts, jeans, and shoes, and tank tops. I think those are the 7 categories. So when I actually did look at women's clothing for a little bit, I thought, you know what, maybe I can take a look at, I think I was looking at women's jeans first, because I remember picking up jeans and then jeans kind of intimidate me a little bit, so I don't do many of them, only because I don't like measuring them and I don't like picturing them.
Right.
I don't know why, because anyone would say, well, you take a picture of a shirt, what's the difference?
Yeah.
I just thought just the whole process kind of irked me a little bit. And they're a little bit, I just didn't like it. So I thought, you know what, if I'm going to do jeans, maybe I'll do men's and women's. So I started looking to it that way. And I just felt like I was taking on too many different types of clothing. And I wasn't enjoying clothing at this point to begin with. So that's when I said, you know what, my passions, I guess, if you would say it, are in other types of things, like vintage items. Now, I do like vintage clothing. Don't get me wrong. I love finding old tags, old company names, that type of thing, and looking them up. That really interests me. I don't know why. But just finding something super old and being able to look it up is fun.
Yep.
So,
and I've talked about that in a lot of my videos and podcasts about, you find the thing that you're interested in, and it makes it fun. It makes it interesting. And you don't mind doing the work, and you don't mind doing the research. And, what one person thinks might be a crazy thing to look into, someone else is like, man, this is heaven. I love doing this. And that's the beauty of reselling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, another reason I kind of didn't move into more types of clothing is because I felt like I had stockpiled enough of one type of item. I have literally hundreds of each, like button-up shirts, T-shirts, even jeans, which I'm not really a big fan of. So I kind of get to the point when I have one category and I see how fast they move. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they're not moving fast enough. I kind of stopped sourcing that for a while. There's something wrong, either my listing's wrong, I'm buying the wrong stuff. There's something. Or maybe I'm just not.
I think you froze up on
as passionate about should be. Yeah.
So when you've got that big stockpile of stuff and you've made that decision to stop sourcing, what do you do to try to get that pile of stuff moving? Do you run markdown sales? What's your strategy to kind of deal with slow moving or dead inventory?
Sure. What I do, actually, I just did this. I had probably about 200 base, kind of like Under Armour, Nike, dry fit type shirts. And about 2 weeks ago, I said, you know what? These are not moving at all. So I just lock them up. I'll make lots based on size, based on color, style, that type of thing. And I would just have a sale. It'll be, 30%, 50% of whatever. And it'll be lots of 5, 10, whatever I can do, and just blow them out.
Yeah.
I do promoted listings. I do markdown manager. I kind of do it all.
Yeah.
Anything, if it sits for clothing, I have stuff that has sat for literally 3 years.
Yeah.
And when you have that, that really irks me. So that's why I kind of stop and say, why am I continuing to purchase this and this? So I have to do something. I'll usually bundle it up. And in worst case scenario, I donate it. This is something I've had a really, really hard time doing because I always feel like I can get something out of this. I know I bought this for $2.99. I've listed it for $19.99, but for 3 years, that's too long. So
right, because theoretically, you've already lost your money.
Exactly.
By the point where it gets to 3 years down the road. Plus, I would think with clothing, you start to run into the, what is fashionable today is not necessarily fashionable in 3 years. For somebody like me with old books, a long tail old book is still theoretically as valuable in 3 years as it is today. You just got to find the right buyer. But with clothing, if you've got the wrong style and you've got 200 of them, a year from now, you could really be stuck. So.
Exactly. So, and another thing is space. If you have basically dead inventory and it's sitting there not doing anything, I guess I could cross list. I tried, that is one other thing I did try. I went to Poshmark for a little bit. Really didn't have a fun time there at all. Because I basically started that this year. So, and I just felt like for the time I'm putting in, watching items sit, I can look at different types of items. Why settle on clothing only? So that's kind of why I've separated a bit.
So is that how you then moved into kind of the vintage toys and the other stuff that you're into?
Yeah. So basically I said, I'm really pigeonholing myself. So I started looking at the other things I had, the other interests. I like vintage, pretty much anything, but vintage toys, action figures, board games, video game systems. So I looked at those 4 things and I said, I've sold these before, mainly on Amazon. I can do a little bit of this on eBay as well. So I started seeing what can I buy in bulk for relatively cheap. My whole thing with clothing is if I could buy it for under $2 a piece and sell it for between 20 and 30, that was kind of what I was trying to do. When things sit, then you have to cut that price, and it doesn't make it worthwhile.
Right.
But with vintage toys and video games, what seems to happen is eventually they do sell. They're a lot smaller, a lot lighter a lot of times. And there are a lot less of them, depending on what you get, obviously. So what I found is I could actually buy, especially this year, a lot of people were selling whole, like maybe their childhood toys or whatever it was, but I was able to buy in bulk. So I said, I want to buy in bulk, but I don't want to buy clothing in bulk. I want to buy something I'm interested in. So I started buying video games in bulk, action figures in bulk. I bought like a huge G.I. Joe action figure lot. I bought 3 or 4 of them actually.
Yeah.
So I got probably about 500 or 600 figures, and they're extremely light. And by light, I mean an ounce, 2 ounces, maybe. And I'm in the realm of things, I'm paying about 50 cents to $1 a piece, maybe.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, you know what? I can store these much more easily. I can sell these just as fast, if not faster. So why not? So that's kind of the realization I came to over the last 6 months.
So how do you store like vintage action figures? What's your process for, you get the thing listed now, you got to put it somewhere. They're kind of unusual shapes. It's not like you can stack 50 of them. How do you handle the storage of those items?
Sure. Well, with G.I. Joes, I have them bagged. They're Ziploc bagged. And what I try to do is I have tubs, and I try to get multiples of the same figure. The good thing about certain figures, G.I. Joe is one of them, is that you can get them in abundance. So I can get 3, 5, 10 of the same exact type of figure. And I'm careful to where, let's say I have one that's missing an arm. Obviously, I'm not going to picture that and sell it in the same listing as one that's not. But they're around the same shape. If they, obviously the same figure. So I'll bag them all together. I'll have a Ziploc bag of like 5 figures, 7 figures. I'll have them all in a tub, and that tub will be marked. And I put that in my custom SKU.
Right.
So I know where to find it.
How do you ship toys?
Oh, with that, mainly it's all first class. I mean, you're talking about...
Right, but I mean, does it go in a box? Do you put them in a poly bag? How do you, what's the actual mechanics of it?
I kind of go by price. With most of these, like a lighter, say it's under 4 ounces, I will ship I will double bubble, and I'll put that in. So it's basically triple bubble wrapped, and it won't go in a box. It'll be in just a bubble envelope, basically. If it is something that's more expensive, and by, I'd say, $30 or more, if somebody's playing priority mail, if it's, got insurance on it, that type of thing, I'm boxing it. So it kind of depends on the fragility and the expense of the item.
Gotcha. So you mentioned you dabbled a little bit in Poshmark, and you talked about you'd done some Amazon in the past. Where are you selling today? What platforms are you active on at the moment?
I mean, technically, I could say I'm selling on all of them. Basically, it's eBay and Amazon. I'm on Poshmark. I have maybe 25 items, I think, left. I sell 1 or 2 a month. I'm not planning to continue that. I already have them cross-listed, so I didn't want to take them down. I tried the whole sharing of closets thing.
Right.
And I just felt like it was a bit of a time suck, and I was doing a lot better with eBay and Amazon.
Yeah.
Mercari for me has been a mixed bag. I've done a little bit more. With toys, it's not bad, actually. So I've had a little bit of success, and I can sell slightly more expensive items.
Yeah.
I'm also on Etsy, but there's just too many platforms for me. So right now it's basically, I'd say 80% eBay, 15% Amazon, and the rest is Mercari, that tiny little bit of Poshmark, and local sales. When
you're Amazon, are you FBA, or are you doing merchant fulfilled, or do you do a little of both?
Until March of this year, I was 100% FBA. Once COVID hit, and I'm not sure when they stopped taking in shipments for FBA for a while.
Right.
So because of that, anything that was there, and I had no choice about that. So I merchant fulfilled everything. And that's, to be honest, as bad as it sounds, this is the first year I've ever merchant fulfilled. I mean, I might have done one or two items randomly, but now I want to say I'm 50-50 merchant fulfilled Amazon, FBA on Amazon. So I have maybe, I don't know, 300 items in FBA, 300 items merchant fulfilled. They're both about the same. They're as easy as each other. It's just the same as doing eBay. You know, full well about that. But
the FBA stuff, is it cross-listed anywhere else, or do you leave that exclusively as FBA?
I used to use Joe Lister, and I used to cross-list everything that was in FBA to my eBay store. But what I found is there are at least 3 times where they would delay the shipping from FBA when it sold on eBay.
Sure.
And because of that, I just said, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I know, and I think technically there's a rule against that. I could be wrong, that they count that as drop shipping technically, since it's not in hand. So I could be wrong, but I just got rubbed the wrong way there. And I just, I don't want this again.
Right.
I remember having a conversation with the Amazon customer service because they technically said it was being shipped, but they didn't give me a tracking number. So I said, okay, this is being shipped then. Can I have a tracking number? And they gave me this long code thing, which is basically their internal number that says it's going to be shipped.
Right.
So I was trying to explain to them that, well, I need to put a tracking number in. And they said, long story short, they didn't have one yet.
Yeah.
So I just didn't like that at all.
Yeah. A lot of people swear by FBA, but I don't know. I'm not sold. What are your opinions on it on its own, FBA, not with the cross-listing piece?
I mean, well, FBA for certain items, if you sell, especially around Christmas, it's great. I know a ton of people that they kill it. That's all they do. 100% FBA around Christmas, their sales quadruple or 10x or whatever it is. I used to be in the same boat. I don't know. I've been burned too many times, I guess, with FBA, either when it comes to brands coming after you. And I don't sell anything extraordinary. I sell, video games and toys and puzzles. I had a puzzle brand come after me saying, take down all your puzzles. I had 3 puzzles. Come on. I mean, they're like going for $20, $22, nothing fancy.
Yeah.
And I said, no, take this down. So that kind of thing, I just felt like I was losing time. It was a waste of time. And I wasn't a giant FBA seller. So for me, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that hard. I feel for anyone that was, really, selling 100% of everything they were doing was on FBA. I was able to pull my items back and put them on eBay.
Gotcha.
For the majority of them.
So you've still got 300 odd items there. Are those
SKUs?
Are those things that you will continue, or when those sell out, are you going to kind of wash your hands?
I like to continue with I like the idea of having the FBA account and having it active.
Gotcha.
I make a decent amount to where it pays, like the monthly pays for itself, and I make a little bit, nothing substantial anymore. So,
but it is nice to maintain that account, because I made that mistake when I had my record store back in the olden days. I had an Amazon account, and at that time you weren't gated. You could just sell whatever. Yeah. And when I closed the store in 2012, I stopped selling on Amazon because I didn't really have any product. I didn't have any need for it. And I just kind of let it go. And I got an email from them. I want to say it was 2017, maybe. And they're like, your account has been inactive for 5 years. If you're not going to use it, we're going to close it. And I just was like, sure, go ahead, close it. I don't care. Well, now here I am. And I look into it, and I have to sign up, and I can't use the account that I used originally. I've got to essentially start fresh. Yeah. And I'm gated, of course, in my primary category, music with CDs. So it's almost pointless for me. I could do the books, but I was just like, man, what if I'd have just thrown a couple of things up there just to keep it active? So I totally get that idea. Yeah. How many listings do you have across all platforms, roughly?
Okay, so I'd say around 2,700. I have to check what my eBay is about 18 to 1,900.
Now, is that like, no, you're items and like multiples? Like if you've got a green shirt, is it I'm not fishing for your inventory, but I mean, do you do that sort of, I'm buying 15 of a shirt and I put up one listing with a quantity of 15 and then the different sizes and.
I probably have about 20 on eBay. I'm thinking about 20 different multi-quantity items. A lot of those are action figures, and actually they're only action figures or clothing, except for one item. I have this one kind of random clothing, like a wristband type item. I have like 50 of those. So most of those are clothing action figures. I do, about 20 of them I'd say are multi-listed items.
Yeah.
That's actually one of my goals for this year, to get more of those. Easier to list, obviously, and just keep replenishing.
Right. I was just going to say, is the replenishable, because you and I offline, we were talking about Chris, Daily Refinement, and that is one of his, tickets to paradise, if you will, the whole replenishable thing. He is all about that stuff. I was just going to say, is that something that you're looking at as we go into 2021?
It is. It makes it kind of a little bit more difficult. It's not, when I deal with vintage action figures, so replenishing them isn't as easy as replenishing a brand new video game. So, because sometimes it's a little bit harder to get. So I have some of those. So what I'm thinking about is brand new clothing. I've never really dabbled in brand new clothing at all. So I'm thinking about doing that. So that would be a lot easier for me to get replenishables. And then if I can buy that in bulk too, that would be even better. So those are the plans for the coming year, replenishables in bulk.
And how would you go about doing that? Or have you started that process? And I know Chris, again, he talks a lot about, establishing vendor relationships so that you can buy, like you say, in bulk, and, and give me kind of a sense of what's your definition of bulk. Are you wanting a pallet load, a truckload? How much stuff, what kind of investment in inventory are you looking to make?
To be honest, I'm looking, I always say this, but I don't think I'll ever stop thrifting. But I always say I have to if I want to move on to the next step. I used to have a shipping store. I used to always have access to space. So that was my biggest thing, where like a pallet or two or three wouldn't have been an issue. I had places to put them. I could put them in my garage now, but that's already a huge mess. But so I guess my access before, when I was in the Bay Area, is I had access to about 3 or 4 different Goodwills, and I knew the managers. I'd been able to talk to them and kind of talk to them about, whenever you get X, Y, and Z pallets, anything that's surplus, let me know. And I used to do a lot of kind of home, kind of personal care items. So they would give me like little lotions, little like makeup things, and I would get these in bulk. So it wasn't me picking them. It was basically, I was at their whim, depending on whatever they got. They would get a lot of Target returns. So that was, I guess that's what they dealt with. So I would get all these, makeups, things, makeup holders, lipsticks, all this kind of thing. And I would sell those mainly on Amazon. Now, the problem is, this is 3 years ago when brand gating started to happen. So that's a lot of that thrown out the window. One, I don't live over there anymore. 2, a lot of those brands I'm gated in. Yeah. So right now what I've been trying to do is reach out to people, stores. I'm trying to look and see if there are any stores that are going out of business, if they're looking to move inventory. I try to do this stuff face-to-face. I'm not very good at it, to be honest. I try and shoot emails and start that way and just kind of see, can we meet? Do you have an overstock of any kind? I kind of search the web, especially, with the way COVID's kind of shut a lot of things down recently. So, that's kind of in process. So I don't really have many leads right now. So I'm kind of trying to build those up right now.
What sort of stores are you looking, like small independent businesses or bigger, like Macy's just announced they're closing another 125 stores?
The Goodwill I fell into, to be honest, it wasn't like I knew some manager. I happened to walk in and I happened to see 2 people talking. One of them happened to be a regional manager talking to the local manager. And I just kind of walked behind them and I was looking through some stuff. and they talked about the item. They were just talking about it. And I just said, oh, do you have any more of these? And they looked at each other, and then the regional manager said, do you want to come in the back? So that was completely lucky.
Right.
I did nothing for that. So I wish I had a better story, a better.
That actually is a great story because it's, instant networking, paying attention when an opportunity presents itself. And sometimes people get so, kind of pigeonholed in what they're doing. They're not. When I'm out at a sale, I'm always listening to what other people are talking about, what things they're looking to score and whatever, because that's just one more thing in my toolbox that I could be looking for. And that's an opportunity that never would have presented itself if you hadn't been paying attention.
Oh, and it was huge for me because like I said, I had zero, I didn't have any wholesale accounts, I didn't have any of that. And what they did actually was, the thing that sealed it actually was that I spent money in that day. Because I think when I walked in there, he looked at me, he said, would you be okay with that? And he kind of just pointed over. It was a pallet of, like I said, mixed home goods. It was everything there were blenders in there. There were lipsticks. There were makeup things. And I could kind of see on the top, they also had a lot of, not expired, but I guess there was a year left on it. It was like vitamins and things like that. This is when I could actually sell that stuff on Amazon. So when I saw that, and I said, well, what would you give? What could I pay you for this? I said something ridiculous like that. And he kind of looked at me and said, well, whatever the sticker is on there, if you want to pay half, the more you take, the better it is for you. He said something like that. Yeah. So I looked at it, and all the stickers they had these red Target stickers. They're all like $3, $4, something like that. And I just said, would you take $1 a piece? I said something like that. And he said, are you going to take it all? And I kind of balked there because this was a pallet. There's a lot of small stuff. So I'm guessing there's like thousands of dollars of stuff in there because it's so small. I kind of gulped a little bit. I said, well, I could take a lot. I said something like that. So then he kind of stopped. He said, okay, well, we'll see what you get. And he kind of walked away. So I bought as much as I could. I think I spent like $1,000 that day. I'd never spent anything close to that. Mainly makeup and, like I said, lotion, little things. And that was pretty good, actually. I made out with that one. But because of that, they kept my phone number at the register. And I remember the next time I walked in, it said Mo, and it had my phone number on the side of the register, like a little piece of paper. I don't know how long it lasted, but at least I got a couple of calls. Oh, we got a pallet of this. We got a pallet of that. And I didn't always buy everything. I'm not trying to say, but at least I got that call.
Yep.
And the second and third time, pretty much every time after that, I got a call. I went in as fast as I could. I said, okay, I'll be there in a minute.
Yep.
And I was there. It was in my hometown, so it was 5 minutes away. And because of that, I got a call from another guy in San Jose Goodwill, which is about 20 minutes away from me. I went in there and I purchased. I think the main thing is out of this is if you actually show them that you're going to spend money and you don't give them a hard time about it, you just take it. Then that was what helped me, at least for those 3 or 4 stores.
Yep.
Basically only one of them would really call me back, but at least I got a call from 3 other stores. So that was helpful.
And I've talked about a similar thing with estate sales where I've established some relationships, and now, I've got several of them that call me and say, hey, we've got a house full of books or a house full of records. If you can be here by 4:00 and take them, they're yours, kind of thing. So establishing those relationships, especially if you're willing to do, like you said, a bulk buy and no questions asked, I'm going to take it all and I'll give you whatever, 50 cents or $1 or 8 cents, whatever it works out to be. That's a fantastic opportunity. So what do you do? How do you process all that? So you got 1,000 items in a big box. Do you have everything kind of inventoried at your house?
I do. What I do, I have a subsystem, and I try and use a custom SKU. It's a little bit of a mess now, but with those items that I got from that day at the Goodwill, I literally took everything in boxes and I touched it box by box. I separated it by item. So lotions here, lipstick here, whatever here. And I separated it by item. And I actually had help at that time, so it was a little bit easier. And what the 2 of us did basically was just we set up custom SKUs for each item. Like, I think it was like
Sure.
LP, and then we had a number next to it for lipstick, or something like that. And then we did it box. I really took my time. That's another thing. I had the space so I could do that. I wasn't freaking anybody out about, taking up the living room or something. So, yeah. But yeah, I remember we just did lipstick for like a day or 2 or 3 days. And then we went on to lotion, and then we went on to that. So I really broke it down by that. And I'm really glad I did that at the beginning, because I know just from when I've been here by myself and I've left inventory, I've listed it and I've kind of left it to one side. That's a great way to mess things up. Yeah. So with Amazon, it also makes it easier that whenever you do all the work up front. So when you're labeling, you kind of can't leave it out. You have to, if you want, especially because I was sending in the FBA. So after it was organized, I had to label it all, and you send it off. So there is no way to kind of leave it if you're not, other than not sending it in, I guess. So that was helpful, and it kind of structure-wise for me, that organized it for me. I just kind of sent in everything I could, and I couldn't send in everything. Like, some of the stuff was, expired. Some of the stuff was, the packaging was broken or something. Sure. So, but yeah, that was really helpful, just having that structure, actually.
Yeah. So if you got an opportunity like that now, not really using Amazon in that way, would you still take it, and would you try to do something with it on eBay, or would you pass?
I would really have to think about it. Only because I'd have to look it up. With 3-4 years ago on Amazon, you could sell pretty much anything. At least you break even, and you can just pull back the items, and then that would be done with it. Now I would have to double check and see if it would sell. I would probably right now say yes. I would jump at anything, because I haven't had a wholesale deal in a while. So if it's made sense money-wise, and if I thought I could sell it, I would jump at it. Yes, I definitely would.
Very cool. So let's shift gears a little bit and move into the YouTube, podcasting, social media aspect, which is where you and I actually met originally. Talk to me a little bit about the podcast. Tell everybody where they can find you. For starters, obviously Reseller Niche Podcast, but give us kind of the rundown of that whole thing.
Well, when I originally started, I had a partner, Russ, and the two of us, we started it as an interview type show. And that kind of changed along the way, because we kind of felt like we didn't really like only doing interviews. So that changed, and this is, I want to say, 2017. And about a year after that, I'd say, I moved up from the Bay Area to the Sacramento area. So we took about an 18-month break. So that kind of killed the podcast and everything, to be honest. So then once I started right back up, Russ was no longer reselling. So he just felt like it wasn't, it wasn't a good fit if he wasn't reselling and we're doing a reselling podcast.
Sure.
So that made sense. So what I wanted to do when I started back up is do a little bit of everything. I felt like I said, I didn't really want to just do only interviews. My whole thing now is to kind of do a podcast in a way where I can talk about the process while at the same time pushing myself. Because I felt like when I was doing a podcast or when I was doing YouTube, I was doing that and I wasn't reselling, and they got separated for some reason. So right now we do a lot of live listing things invite people to come on or whatever they want to do. I'm basically forcing myself to list more and to get more into reselling, as opposed to just separating myself and talking about it. Because I have a tendency to get sidetracked very, very easily.
So how do you avoid that while you're doing a live? So you're on, I've caught bits and pieces, and we talked about it last week. My setup is, my kind of YouTube podcasting stuff is over here, and all my listing action is over there. So I really can't do both at once. How does that work for you? How do you keep from getting so deep into a conversation that you're still able to do the listing?
Well, I split up my listing. I usually, I'm either taking pictures only when we're on live, or I'm actually doing the rest of the list, like I'm doing the draft and submitting it. Because I've always done my listings that way anyway. I always take pictures, and I always sort and just do picture for like 3 hours, and then I'll do my listings. So I found that easier. And the second thing is I'll try and have people on with me. So if I'm lost in whatever I'm doing, I don't technically have to be speaking or paying attention, as bad as that sounds, but I've got help. So I still get lost and I still get distracted very easily. So I wish I had a better answer, but no, I try and split it up. I try and make it very simple. Like I'm only editing descriptions or I'm only taking pictures. Make it as simple as possible. Then I won't get distracted.
Yeah. And how have those shows gone? You've been doing them a couple of times a week. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, we do 3 to 4 a week. It's interesting because still at the beginning, I'm talking to myself at the beginning, which I think is good. Like I'm literally talking to the screen. I can see there's a big 0 on this. Nobody That's okay. For me, it's actually a confidence builder. I'm naturally kind of awkward in front of the camera talking. I don't like hearing myself talk. Maybe, I don't know if that's a common thing, but
I think it is.
Yeah.
Most people, they say, hate the sound of their own voice. So when they hear it back, when you hear it when you're just talking, it's one thing. But when you hear it played back on a recording or through a set of headphones, you're like, oh man, do I really sound like that?
Yeah. And that's another reason I prefer lives over edited videos, because in edited video, you have to listen to yourself speak. And that's not fun. But yeah, I mean, if I can get a little public speaking, if you call it, experience out of it, and then list at the same time, those two things, if I can push myself to do more listings, because listing eventually, especially when I try and do listings of the same types of items, it gets a little boring sometimes.
Oh yeah.
So if I can talk to somebody and get through it somehow and then move on to the next thing faster, anything helps right now. And I kind of feel like YouTube right now, like I was saying this earlier today, is kind of like this is like our, water cooler right now.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're all kind of at home doing our own thing. And if for like half an hour a day, we can talk to somebody else that's doing the same thing, I don't feel as, bored. I can kind of get through a little bit faster.
How long are the lives? You do an hour or 2 hours or just whatever?
Well, one of the things I tried to do is I forced myself to start at 6 a.m. my time just to get myself up at 6 a.m. And nobody's even up, I don't think.
I would probably be up because that's like 9 o'clock here. But
I'm on the West Coast. So that's true. Because I have Leroy, Blood, Sweat, and Cell. He's on the East Coast. So for him, it's 9 a.m.
Yeah.
So, and to be honest, he's usually up at I guess an hour or two before that. So he has no problem with it. I have a real problem getting up at that time in the morning.
Me too. It is. The problem is I just don't do it.
Yes. So like I looked at my watch. It's at 5:45 in the morning. I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
But then after I get up, I have a hard time going back to sleep. So that's I guess a good problem to have. But yeah, they run. The longest one we did was 5 hours. I'm not sure if I would do that again. That was a little too long. I think 2 to 3 hours is good. It all depends on how many items I have to list, to be honest. It's a very selfish endeavor. I hate to say it, but it's all about pushing the listings out and hopefully meeting some cool people and having a conversation along the way.
Do you try to repurpose any of that content for the podcast?
I tried on the podcast. I used to do podcasts completely separate from YouTube, and I would have an outline and I'd read through it and it wouldn't be on camera at all. And I could do that and that was fine. And then I tried doing that same thing on camera, and it was difficult for me. I don't know why. I would just record the audio before and I wouldn't have an issue. But looking at the camera and saying the same thing made it awkward. So that's kind of why I brought in the live listings. So I thought, okay, I can talk and I can do this and I can repurpose it as a podcast. I've done that a couple of times and I felt like the repurposed podcast wasn't up to scratch. It lost something. When I went to listen to it, I thought, if I'm listening to it as a viewer, what am I listening? I'm listening to a couple of people talking. It's not an interview. There's pauses when when I'm taking pictures or whatever, and there's like rustling and this and that. I leave the room, I come back. What am I listening to? So I'm kind of at the point where I have to separate the podcast and depending on what the YouTube video is. Like if I'm talking about something specific, like a sold or a news or something like that, that's fine. But if I'm just like right now, this would be fine. But if I'm just over here listing something, then it kind of loses its.
Right.
I would lose interest personally.
Would there be pieces of the conversation that you could go in and edit? And I mean, obviously then you're adding a whole nother layer of work, but is there stuff there that you think would be valuable enough to chop up into, a 10-minute highly edited podcast from 2 hours of conversation with a variety of resellers?
There is. So that's actually what I'm planning to do for the future. I do actually do a show on Tuesday, which is not, excuse me, it's kind of, my speaker's going out there, I think. I call it Reseller Light. We talk about everything like from movies to pop culture and stuff like that. Now, that's what I've been putting out as a podcast. But for the second or third because I used to do 3 a week, the second and third podcast, I try and do exactly what you're saying. I try and pull from the lives. And it takes a long time to do that. Yeah. Because if you're talking about 3 hours and 4 hours, and then sometimes you'll go an hour with something I don't feel like there's anything in that entire hour that's worth listening to. Yeah. So because of that, yes and no. I'm in the process of doing that.
Gotcha. What are your goals for your YouTube channel? You've got a Facebook group. You're really active on Instagram. Obviously, you have the podcast. Where are you trying to go with all of that?
The actual goal originally was to get really, really niche down. I wanted to do more specific shows on specific items, not just button-up shirts, but a specific brand made in a specific year, really niche down. I haven't really got to that yet. I've recorded a few pre-recorded videos on vintage action figures. Wow, this is really...
It's really crackling.
I don't know what just happened. It just went. Okay. So I've recorded a few. They were mainly to do with action figures, vintage, things like that. So my goal is to have very niche down videos about very specific subjects. I'm trying to talk about things that other people aren't talking about. Yeah. I'd rather not. I love haul videos. I love what sold videos. I do them. But I feel like there's a lot of them out there, and I'd rather talk about something one I'm passionate in talking about, and also that maybe people aren't talking about. There's a few people out there doing them right now, but there's a million different things you can talk about. So why not? And I don't know if they'll be taken well, but I think I'd enjoy it.
Well, and that's kind of the point. If you enjoy doing them, it's kind of like, the things that you pick to resell. If you're having a good time and you get something out of it, of course, I would love for thousands of people to watch these videos and listen to this podcast. But realistically, I just like talking to people and I like doing them. And I kind of like the change of pace from the reselling piece to come in and edit it and, throw in some graphics and do whatever. So it's a nice way to change up, a couple of days a week and just do something different. And, hopefully at some point it makes a little money, but if not, it's fun to do.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of helps you get through the day, at least for me.
Right. Which do you prefer, doing the lives? And before you were doing the kind of listing live, I was on a couple, I think, of the live kind of Friday night reseller hangout kind of thing. Yeah. What's that versus the structure of the podcast, like you said, having the outline and going through all of that? Which, do you have a preference?
I think for the podcast, it's either for me, it'll have to be very specific. It has to be an interview, or it has to be an outlined, scripted, or at least semi-scripted format for me. But as far as YouTube goes, if I have several people on there, you can kind of get away with not having it as scripted. Sure. I guess just being able to see someone, you can engage with them a little bit better than you can without being able to, if somebody's listening to a podcast and you just can't, there's some things you can't get out of that.
Right. Although they say those people are really engaged And like when you let somebody into your ear holes, as it were,
Yeah.
they're really, and they listen to the long form. I go back and I look at my stats on, these hour-long YouTube videos, and the average view time is, 28, 29 minutes. So it's sometimes less than half of it.
Yeah.
But on the podcast, people listen to the whole thing. So it's a completely different experience. So maybe you don't feel like it's engaged, but I think those listeners probably are.
And actually, for that exact reason, I kind of felt bad. I mean, unless I really do a good job editing, pulling out of those long like listing videos, if I have these long pauses, then I feel like I'm not really giving them what they want. They want a continuous flow of information, whether it's interviews or, you're talking about something, you've got news or whatever it is. If I can do that, then that's fine. But it's in process. The podcast is kind of, I enjoy doing the podcast, but I kind of feel like I'm shortchanging people unless I give them something a little bit more organized.
Yeah. Yep. Totally get that. So we're bumping up against an hour here. So let everybody know again where they can find you on the various social medias, and, tell us a little bit about your Facebook group.
Sure. You can, the podcast is called the Reseller Niche Podcast. On YouTube, we're called the same thing. You can look us up under Reseller Niche. On Instagram, it's reseller_niche. Any of those places, you'll be able to find all of our links. And the Facebook group is basically, it's a small-ish group, got about 150 people. So we're geared towards talking about the items we sold, showing off, weekly sales, weekly hauls, that type of thing. And that's called the Reseller Niche Help Group. Nice long name.
Just rolls right off the tongue.
Exactly. Yeah. So all of these, it's all, resale related. And the goal for all of this is just to help people, to help myself get through the day, meet new people, and maybe learn a little stuff on the way, maybe get a little bit more work done, be a little bit more efficient. Because like I said, that's my issue from day one, just being organized, being efficient. So if I can meet a few new faces and hear a few new stories, that helps.
Well, hopefully that does help. And I will, of course, link to all of your stuff in the show notes and the video description below. So if you're watching or listening, please go check out all of the various Reseller Niche sites. Before we go, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I just like to say thank you, Ryan, for having me on here. I've been watching you and listening to your podcast for, it's going on 6 months now, I think, at least. So I appreciate Ryan. I appreciate his style. He's very, in terms of professionalism in our little reselling world, I think you're very I like the,
I'm going to have to edit all this out. You realize that?
Yeah. So I'll take the check in the mail later.
I appreciate it.
No, seriously though, this is what I enjoy right here. Getting to meet new people, talking to people, even though I've known Ryan for a couple months now at least. So this is the fun part of it. So if anyone out there is reselling by themselves, I think number one thing I'd say is reach out, because I'm, like I said, a relatively awkward person. Reach out, however, if that's online, Instagram, maybe you see someone in a thrift store, an estate sale, whatever it is. Reach out and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. What are you doing?
Yeah. And
just kind of take it from there.
Yep. And like you talked about kind of earlier, this is YouTube in particular has kind of become the water cooler and, the friend area of a workplace for resellers, because this can be, a pretty lonely business. Most of us are not working with, we're not blessed like Lonnie at Shed Flips, where his wife just quit her job and she's now working with him. We don't have, it's just me, it's just you. Yeah. And most of our friends and family don't really fully understand what it is we do. So you talk to them about it and they look at you like you got four heads. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I've seen the eye roll many times.
Right. So finding people, out there on YouTube where you can, I go to a lot of lives. I'm closing this thing up here in a few minutes and I'm going to watch Derek, Fundamentals of Side Hustling. He does a live on Wednesday night. And it's just nice to interact with a group of like-minded people that ordinarily in your day-to-day work you would do in the workplace, but we don't have that. So
exactly. And I think it's, to be honest, for a lot of the different professions out there, they're going to start jumping. I mean, my kids, for example, they don't get to see their friends face to face. They see them through Zoom. So take advantage if you can. Reach out, even lurk in the background. I still do it.
Right. Just sign up, subscribe, watch, hit the little thumb up thing. And, you know, you don't have to comment if you don't want.
Exactly.
Well, awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time out and rescheduling for today. I was in the middle of a mess of stuff, so I appreciate your flexibility. And it's always good talking to you. I'm sure I will be on one of your lives coming up sooner rather than later.
Thanks so much, Ryan. I
Awesome.
appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. So hopefully that was a good interview. I had a great time doing it. Mo, thank you again for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge and your experiences. It was really great to talk to you. I'm sure we're going to go back and forth probably multiple times in the future doing each other's shows, but I hope you all got something out of that and enjoyed it. If so, you know the drill. Do me a favor, whack that thumbs up button and show YouTube that this was a great interview. With that, we're going to close it for the week. Have a great week. Stay healthy, stay safe. And now it's time to sell. Thanks, guys. Hey, everybody. Thanks for spending a little time with Galaxy CDs, rocks, and flips. If you'd like to spend a little more time, there's another video in the upper right-hand corner. If you'd like to spend a lot more time, you can subscribe down below.